October 5th, 2021 Hempstead Town Board meeting. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, I will. Supervisor Slavin.
Here.
Councilman Blakeman.
Here.
Councilman Creedy.
Yeah.
Councilman D'Esposito.
I'm here.
Councilman Dunn.
Here.
Senior Councilwoman Boothby. Here. Councilman Muscarello.
Here. I'm going to ask that our receiver of taxes lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Here. Oh. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good morning, everybody, and I hope all is well. But before we begin today's meeting, we want to take a moment here to recognize some outstanding people we've worked with, particularly in our sanitation department. So with that, I'd like to invite William Doherty, Daniel Brenes, and Jason Williams to come up here for a minute. Gentlemen, it is always great when people take the time to say wonderful things about people, particularly who are out there not stopping. And as everybody knows, during this pandemic and beforehand, our sanitation department was non-stop. Everyone's garbage got picked up. You guys came to work. You came to work, you reached frankly, you know what? You put your lives on the line while other people are sheltered home. So when we get the opportunity for residents to just send us a letter just saying how awesome you are, how friendly you are, how you really, do an outstanding job, and they love when their garbage gets picked up because of the three of you. It's really an opportunity that when I see something like that, I want to ask you guys to come in because I know I can speak for everybody here. We're so grateful because you do an outstanding job, but more importantly, it's even nice to know that people on those blocks in your area took the time to actually send us emails and ask us to take the time and do something special for you. So we're doing that. Today we're presenting you with special pins and citations, but I just want to say, and you're representative of everybody in that department, which are really good men and women who do an amazing job. We want to say thank you to you for all you do, all you've done for this pandemic, and the residents want to thank you as well. So Drive in Wantagh, you're like their favorite people in the entire world. So what I'd like to do is ask everybody in the town board and of course Kate and Janine to come down. We want to do a group photo as just a way of saying thank you, but those residents really took the time to say what a great job you're doing. So please. Oh, and by the way, and of course, we are joined by our union president, so we want the photo. Like I said, we work with a great group here. We're real lucky. Terry Gupta, where are you, Terry? We want you to join us in the photo team, so great job.
Real quick, listen, during Sandy, 2012, all we heard was accolades about how great Kate was because she got sanitation 24 hours a day working. You guys did such a great job. Now we're hit with another horrible thing, the pandemic. And my district, across the street from the high school, that W section, it was so great to hear that you guys did such a wonderful job. Thank you. Thank you.
Terry, where are you?
What do you want?
Tommy, look at everybody. Come on. Another Ladies and gentlemen, again for our awesome crew and all the people in the sanitation.
Mr. Supervisor, if I could ask everybody to join with me and rise for a moment of silence. This past weekend, we lost one of our former employees, Elizabeth Muller. She worked for the town board for many, many years. She was my assistant for 40 years. She'll be known for her hard work, dedication, loyalty, friendship, sense of humor, and all that she contributed to town government. Can we please have a moment of silence for Elizabeth Muller? Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Councilman. And now please let the record reflect that the town clerk is delivering copies of the 2021-22 tentative budget. Thank you, Madam Clerk.
Just one thing about Elizabeth, she was always happy, and it was contagious. Everybody around her started smiling. Whenever you saw Elizabeth, she was happy, and then everybody around her was like, so gentle. It was really sort of an incredible person. And it is a loss, but not only a loss. Thank you. Just remember that.
Thank you very much. Now, Madam Clerk, we've done the roll, we've done the pledge of allegiance. If you would please call the first public hearing.
All right, the first public hearing is a proposed local law regarding regulations and restrictions to limit parking in Oceanside.
Okay, any member of the board wish to be heard on this? I do not have any slips on this. Does any member of the public wish to be heard on item number 1? If not, may I please have a motion?
Supervisor, I move that the public hearing be closed and the proposed local law be adopted.
Second.
Supervisor Clayton.
Aye.
Councilman Belanger.
Aye.
Councilman Carini.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Padrón.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Boothby. Aye. Councilman Muscarella.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call the next item.
We have a proposed local law regarding parking of standing prohibitions in and around Cedarhurst and Roosevelt.
Okay, is any member of the board wish to be heard on this? I do not have any slips on this. Does any member of the public wish to be heard on this that's here today? Okay, if not, may I please have a motion?
Mr. Supervisor, I move that the hearing be closed and the local law adopted.
Second motion. Supervisor Clayton.
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Carini.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Padrón.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Boothby. Aye. Councilman Muscarella.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call the next item.
We have a proposed local law regarding arterial stops in Belmore, East Meadow, Elmont, Inwood, and Wantagh.
All right, does any member of the board wish to be heard on this? Okay, I do not have any slips. Does any member of the public wish to be heard on this? If not, may I please have a motion?
I move
Second.
the public hearing be closed and then adopted.
Second.
Supervisor Clayton.
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Carini.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Padrón.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Boothby. Aye. Councilman Muscarella.
Aye. Madam Clerk, please call the next item.
We have a proposed handicap parking on public streets in Belrose Terrace, Belmore, East Atlantic Beach, Elmont, Floral Park, Merrick, and Uniondale.
Okay, does any member of the board wish to be heard on this? All right, I do not have any slips. Does any member of the public here today wish to be heard on this? All right, if not, may I please have a motion?
I move that the be closed and the board accept the application.
Second.
Motion. Supervisor Clayton.
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Carini.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Padrón.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Boothby. Aye. Councilman Muscarella.
Aye. Okay, Madam Clerk, please call the administrative calendar.
There are items 5 through 59 on the administrative calendar. I also have 6 items that are of an urgent or emergency nature. The first emergency resolution authorizes the grant of funds to the Girl Scouts of Nassau County Incorporated, located in the town of Hempstead, to be paid from monies received by the town through the CARES Act to reimburse them for unbudgeted necessary expenses incurred directly related to the COVID-19 pandemic. The second emergency resolution authorizes the transfer of monies received by the town of Hempstead through the CARES Act to fund unbudgeted necessary expenses incurred directly related to the COVID-19 pandemic. The third emergency resolution authorizes the grant of funds to the Family and Children's Association located in the town of Hempstead to be paid from monies received by the town through the CARES Act to reimburse them for unbudgeted necessary expenses incurred directly related to the COVID-19 pandemic. The fifth emergency resolution authorizes the transfer of monies received by the town of Hempstead through the CARES Act to fund unbudgeted necessary expenses incurred directly related to the COVID-19 pandemic. The fifth emergency resolution authorizes amendment to the 2021 adopted budget to increase general fund estimated revenues, an increase to general fund appropriations, an increase to the general fund undistributed other expense account, and an increase of the CARES Act assistance revenue account in the town of Hempstead general fund undistributed. And the last and final emergency resolution authorizes the supervisor to transfer funds from various appropriations and appropriated fund balances to other various appropriations. Those items will be added to the administrative calendar as items 60 through 65.
Okay. Supervisor, with respect to item number 43, there was a clerical error, typographical error. Item 43 on the administrative calendar was revised to reflect the award of bid option number 3, the proposer to accept delivery of mixed paper at the proposer's facility to the entire sole, as the entire sole bidder on that item. The previous draft, item 43, inadvertently omitted bid option number 3 from the award. There are no other changes in item 43.
First, does any member of the board wish to be heard on any item on the administrative calendar? Okay. I have a couple of slips in on the administrative calendar. We'll start with Felix Percussion. If anybody speaking today, we ask you to please go back to the back podium. Thank you very much. If you please give your name and address for the record, that would be appreciated.
Felix Percussion, Franklin Square.
Good morning.
On the 6 additional items, can you give me the total amount of additional spending from these items? Stop the clock, please.
I did.
No, she did stop the clock. We got you. You don't have to tell you. So thank you.
That resolution is the result of our internal auditors doing their regular work. And what it does, the state requires every item to be balanced in the budget. And I think that may total about $8 million. But it's part of a normal end of year adjustment for all the accounts so that nothing is overdrawn. And it was about $8 million.
But you maybe follow up and get a precise number to us.
Yes.
Thanks.
Well, if you could post those resolutions on the town's website, so when I get home, I'll just download them and you could save a lot of time. Because that's required by law anyway. Also, I know this, you don't supposed to speak on this, but I want to object to the date because I believe for, bringing it to the tentative budget resolution, because I believe there may be some errors that I went through last night. Maybe this could be clarified because the numbers are so stark and it contradicts some statements that were made. The general fund appropriations, is it correct to say that it's $221.7 million? $221.79 million, is that a correct number?
This is on the administrative calendar.
Yes, it's a 2022 budget. And I'm objecting to the date on account of...
Okay, then you're objecting to the date, so I'll mark it down.
For a reason, and I'd like to...
No, I'm not disputing that. I'm saying we'll mark it down. You're objecting to the date for it.
Okay.
Is there another date you wanted?
Well, until these are clarified, maybe if they're correct, then I don't object to the date. You see what I'm saying? Because I think there's...
So you're saying you're objecting to it because you...
I would like to ask some questions.
No, I know. Mr. Kemp, so you're saying you're objecting because you think there's something wrong with it, but it's right, then you really wouldn't be objecting?
Yes.
I think that we feel like it's right now, so we're going to stay with that date.
Okay, that's fine.
John, do you feel like trying?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Next, I'd like to bring up Pearl Jacob. Good morning, if you name and address for the record, please. Thanks.
Yes, Project Review. I have a question. Item 5. Can you justify the business in Review? There are 7. I hope one is the 576 Review Avenue, which is a proposed landfill site. I hope that's in Review.
Okay, so she has a question regarding item number 5 on the administrative calendar. Still at the bar? You come on. No, I'm not going to go up to like that. You're good. You just identify yourself, so.
Lou Carnavale, I'm the chief plan examiner. Unfortunately, due to COVID concerns, the person who normally come and answer your questions isn't here. I believe that John Pinsky, who's in charge of our inspection services, may be able to answer your question.
Thank you.
So,
Morning.
oh, yeah, hi, John.
So the question was the 7 locations in New
Yeah, these pertain to our orders. Specifically, I don't know which one you're going to discuss, but there are several on the resolution.
Yeah, I want to know what are the addresses of these videos?
Okay, 535 Decatur Street in Unionville, 897 Front Street in Unionville, 712 Macon Place in Unionville, 324 Macon Grove Avenue in Unionville, and 838 Northern Parkway in Unionville. I'm sorry, there's a bunch of all 823 Park Place in Unionville, 942 Smith Street in Unionville, pertaining to 576 Unionville Avenue. It's not on here for order because these are past date, but I did speak to the buyer. They're closing today, and they have an application already on file to demolish the structure.
Okay, thank you. John, you probably could stay up there because I also have an issue of item number 9. There are 3 locations in Unionville.
Okay, John, perhaps you could shed some light on number 9. Thank you so much.
These pertain to specifically when we have an architect or an engineer go to the property to either constitute a demolition, or for this matter, specifically for number 9. Sorry, I'm just going through all. 701 Nostrand Avenue in Unionville. It was a special assessment. We had to get the architect out there to see if we're going to take down the building. It was approved. That was already approved by town board to take it down, as well as 576. However, this is past dated. It was already done. We had to move the violation in order to sit in order to sell the property. So we are in the process of selling it.
So, John, would you have any sort of estimated date as to when that 576 Unionville Avenue would be demolished?
Once the closing date is done, they have most of the documentation in. They're going to need to get the asbestos report and abatement, unless they intend on doing it. Excuse me. So controlled. If they intend on doing controlled, they have to get a state requirement to do so. So your question pertaining to that, again, it will be done expeditiously in the circumstance immediately once they close.
Councilwoman, is that what you'd like?
Okay, so
Thank you.
one last caveat here. So once the it's passed over to the new owner. Now it's pretty much all on the new owner to get this done. I mean,
Right.
he can take his own time frame. Is that what you're saying? This time frame is not Now's time frame?
I might be able to help you with that. Once a building permit is issued for demolition, the law requires that it be completed within 10 days. So once that permit is issued, they have 10 days to complete that demolition. It has to do with certain requirements under the law that it must be done in that time frame.
Thank you. I just have one more issue. Item 47. My question is, what criteria will be used to select the citizens that would receive these HEPA air filtration units?
That's what working with the United Way, people are applying there, and those in need, or essentially people with underlying condition are having them. So if you have some, if you forward them to the council and I, we'd be delighted to get them to the United Way. We're working them directly. And with the Hispanic Brotherhood, Margarita Grassing. So if you have any, you can always reach out to your representative, Councilwoman Guzzi, or myself, to give it to forward it to the appropriate. Thank you.
So if I have named senior citizens that have health conditions in Unionville, I can forward them to Senior Councilman Booth's office?
You can forward them, and yes, we will forward them to the United Way, and if absolutely we can help, we will.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next, I have Bonnie Carone.
Good morning, Bonnie Barone, Rockville Center.
Thank you.
First, I have a question about item 44. What are the environmental services that are covered by this contract?
Commissioner Marino?
Good morning, Mr. Supervisor, Town Board members, Senior Councilwoman. This here is a resolution asking for environmental contract services for the town of Hempstead for underground tanks and things to that nature. There were 3 bidders. The low bidder is Eastern Environmental Solutions, and it's a requirements contract, so to speak, as needed. If some underground tank was leaks or whatever, we're able to do the necessary cleanup and repair.
So it's just for underground tanks?
I'm sorry.
Just for underground tanks or anything else?
It's basically a couple of minor issues, but it's for underground tanks, and they align the areas right underneath it and so forth.
So why is it just a total of some certain? Is there an hourly rate that they bill when they're called upon? Why is it just a flat fee?
Well, it's not a flat fee. It's a requirements contract. All tanks are different. All tanks are in different areas. I don't have the specific specs in front of me, but it's based on how to get at it, how to clean it up, and things like that.
Well, that makes sense, but for the bids, each of these 3 companies gave a single sum for 3 years.
Well, it's not to exceed. Even when you have a requirements contract, you'll have it not to exceed X amount of dollars. We don't just want to put a blanket, like even in asbestos or other things. We always put a dollar figure on it. And then if we need more, we would go to the controller's office and ask the town board to put more money on.
Would it make sense to have hourly rates or something of that nature, rather than just a flat ceiling?
Bonnie, there could be hourly rates and specifications, but I think the question you're asking, and I think that the commissioner answered it, was the fact that it is a requirements contract, that there is a sum certain, so that that sum is not exceeded before they have to come back, the department has to come back before this board so that we can monitor it and come back before the public and explain if it's more money, why it's more. So it's just a cap on their spending.
So when they bid, these companies are just guessing how much.
No, there is a formula, and basically it's based upon specifications that were put out to bid. It's not a guess.
Okay. It would be more helpful if we had that information available so we could actually understand these resolutions rather than, having to ask these questions so the public would know what was actually going on. But I also have questions.
Ms. Carone, just to be clear, these bids are open in public and the information can be forwarded.
Right, and so 3 or 4 months after this session, I could get the numbers from FOIL. It really doesn't help anyone to understand what's happening today when we vote on it. But I also have questions on items 18 and 19. I understand under the town code that the town board must approve a tree preservation plan, basically, for this kind of subdivision. And there are requirements in the town code, and there are penalties if anything in the town code is violated with respect to destroying trees that are supposed to be preserved. But
In the resolutions, it says, the owner shall replace any trees shown on the tree preservation report as being preserved that are removed for any reason with an equal or greater number of suitable trees. So this basically is no requirement at all. If they're showing you now to vote on what trees will be preserved, but if they don't preserve them, all they need to do is replace them, and who, with what they consider to be suitable trees. So if they take down old growth trees that are, sizable, and they put in saplings, that meets the requirement. There seems to be no requirement at all. The clock, please, should stop and go back a few seconds.
There is a requirement under the building zone ordinance for exactly what you're speaking about. However, you are correct to a certain respect that, for example, if a 20-inch diameter big oak tree is removed, the code does not require that they replace it with a 20-inch diameter large oak tree. It's, in many instances, simply unfeasible. So it does require that they replace it with a bit more than a sapling. It is a 4-inch to 5-inch diameter tree at a minimum that they would need to replace it with. There's a landscape architect that has to prepare a report to see which trees need to be removed for the new construction. Obviously, they can't be where the house is or too close to the foundation. And which trees are in bad shape that need to be cut down in any event. However, you are correct that it's not the same size trees that are replaced.
So in other words, the landscape architect prepared this plan and says we're going to preserve these trees, and that's what you're going to vote on today. And then they can go out tomorrow, and if this says for any reason, if they don't preserve them, we'll just replace them with something small. There seems to be no requirement at all. And who checks on this? And is there a penalty?
I'm sorry, if you want to finish up, Mr. Chairman.
That's not correct. They have to follow the landscape plan prepared by the landscape architect, and it is reviewed upon, or certificates of occupancy are not issued for the permits for the proposed construction.
Well, thank you very much for the clarification on that. Okay. Next, I have James Jacob. Morning, Mr. Jacob. Give your name and address for the record.
Good morning, Vice President, Senior Counsel Boothby, James P. Jacobs, 568 Ash Court. Just one clarification. Items, give me a moment, please. From 25 to 29, first number 1089, going down, I'm sorry, 24, 8, 24, final 26. About the gun violence prevention initiative, could you give me clarification? Because you have both for women, youth, and a lot of other organizations, other programs, and are they all tied together, or they're all separate entities on the same program?
Good morning, Eric Millett, Commissioner.
Good morning, Commissioner. How are you?
Yes, good morning, Supervisor, members of the board. Your question again, please, sir?
Okay, from number
24, you said?
Yes. No, give me a moment. I'm sorry. 26 down to 29, the first number, I guess 24, 8, 24 going forward. I just want clarification of that because I see it's gun violence prevention initiative, but you have it both for women, children, youth, and is all that tied together, or is 3 or 5 or 4 separate programs per se?
Yes, these are all programs for the gun prevention program, yes.
And is this money going to be coming from the CARES Act to fund these particular programs?
No, this money is coming from the state.
The state of the
Yeah, it's a different program. It's a grant program. $1.2 million we've been granted.
Okay, when they speak about the youth, is it like you used to do a PAL kind of situation, or just, because I just want to better understand by youth and women organizations, like who will be eligible to be participants in the program?
Yeah, there has been areas in the state that were targeted, as areas that have most gun violence, and they're given to us by zip codes. We have North Hempstead, Valley Stream, Uniondale, Hempstead, Floral Park, and Baldwin. Of these areas, we will be placing 205 people who are at risk for gun violence, applying jobs and opportunities. You see here with EAC, these are training programs and training the people who will be training young people so we can place them in jobs.
Will this be through the Department of Education, give a location of the different hamlets, or is this a bit of certain location they will have to go to get this training, or? Are they going to go? Well, you name all the areas of hamlets, areas of color, and I'm wondering if there's going to be a central location that people can go to get this training?
Yes,
or is this only applied to areas of color?
They can register with DOOR, and then once we train them, they'll be placed in employment.
Okay.
It's for young people, and it's for people who are at risk. All of these areas were identified by the state.
Yeah, the criteria set forth by the state and all the requirements are set forth by the New York State.
And there's, in the entire program, there's over 9,000. And we have, for Hempstead, Long Beach, we have 205.
Thank you for the commission. Appreciate your diligence. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Jacobs. I don't have any other slips. Anybody else in the public wish to be heard? Administrative calendar? Sheriff, if you give your name and address to the record, please.
Diane Madden, Hempstead.
Good morning, Ms. Madden.
Good morning. Item number 41, please. And it's more of a proposal because, once again, I'm reminded that this board really should be passing a law that requires for all bidders to disclose what their political donations are, how much they are for, and who they are to. I'd like this board to consider that.
Do you have a question on number 41?
That's item number 41.
What's your question?
And it reminded me that this board should take the responsibility and their obligation to pass a law that requires all bidders and responders to RFPs to come forward with what their donations are, if they made donations, who they made donations to, and for how much. Thank you.
Okay. I don't have any other slips. Any other member of the public wish to be heard on the administrative calendar? If not, may I have a
Supervisor, just one moment. As I noted, there was an amendment to item number 43, which added purchase item number 3. Madam Clerk, with your permission, since I have both the old resolution and the amendment adding number 3 to the whereas and resolve clause, if you don't mind, I will read them to the record. Or I can give it to you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Madam Attorney, do you want a motion to modify the item?
But I want to read it into the record first. The penultimate whereas clause shall now say, whereas the Commissioner of Sanitation recommends and that the bid be awarded as follows, options 1, 2, 3, and 5. Previously 3 was omitted, and the resolve clause states that resolved that contract 77A for yearly requirements for acceptance of recyclables at the vendor's facility and or pickup of recyclables from the Department of Sanitation facility be awarded as follows, options 1, 2, 3, and 5.
Supervisor, I move to modify item 43 as read.
Second.
Supervisor Clayton.
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Carini.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Padrón. Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Hughes.
Aye.
Councilman Muscarella.
Aye.
Okay. Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the administrative calendar. It's in entirety. Motion. Can I motion?
I move that we,
If you choose to.
okay, I move that we move 5 through 59 plus the 6 added, okay?
Second.
Supervisor Clayton.
Aye.
Councilman Blakeman.
Aye.
Councilman Carini.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Padrón.
Aye.
Councilman Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Boothby.
Aye.
Councilman Muscarella.
Aye. Okay, may I please have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Supervisor Clayton.
Aye.
Councilman Blakely.
Aye.
Councilman Carini.
Aye.
Councilman Diaz-Zito.
Aye.
Councilman Dunn.
Aye.
Senior Councilwoman Boothby. Councilman Muscarella.
Aye. Okay, now that the formal town board meeting has been adjourned, the town board will remain to listen to the comments of the residents. I have a number of residents who signed in. We will start with Felix Ricacci. Morning again, Mr. Ricacci. Your name and address for the record.
Prakash, Franklin Square. How much reserves are being used on the 22 budget?
Mr. Ricacci, you've been coming a long time. This is our opportunity to listen to you.
Okay. We received a flyer in the mail from Don Clayton saying the general fund is going up 9.22%. I wanted to ask this question during the administrative calendar, but it was denied. But according to the budget that I read, the general fund for 2022 is now $221 million, and for 2021 was $186 million roughly. So that's a $34.7 million increase, which is 18%. I was wondering why that 18% is there, but you said...
Mr. Ricacci, my budget's cutting taxes, so I don't know where you come with the numbers, but just so you know, we're cutting taxes here in Hempstead this year.
And also, miscellaneous revenue, I'd like to know what that is, because that was budgeted in 2020 to be $3.5 million, and is now $53.5 million. So I was wondering where that $50 million came from, if you care to answer. Okay, also, you indicate that you used the $40 million bond from last year to fix the roadways, but according to the bond documents I've received, care to answer or clarify, that would be great. If you don't, then don't do that. You've only borrowed 5.9 of the 40 million. And in fact, the other two parts of the road repair came from the Santino administration at $8 million and $18 million from the Gillen administration. They were authorized during that period. You're borrowing it. But just to put some context into this, most of the money that you're borrowing, the $140 million you're borrowing this year, only $62 million was authorized by the Clayton administration, and the other ones go back to 2010. So they cover the Murray administration, the Santino administration, and the Gillen administration for the balance of that money. So, I mean, it would be nice if you could clarify things. You're a big fan of transparency, so I mean, I'm not sure why you have a problem with it. Anyway, also, Don Durham refuses to abide by New York State's open FOIL law, which requires him to send all appeals to the Committee on Open Government. If he's intentionally doing this, maybe this is a question for Mr. Nocella, is he violating ethics if he's doing this for political reasons, that in order to save face for the town, politically, he's not abiding by New York State law? Is that an ethical violation?
But, Mr. Ricacci, like I said, we're here to listen to you, so we appreciate it.
He was going to answer.
No, I don't want to take your
It's
time.
all freaking honest people here. You don't want to answer one freaking question. I mean, it's really, truly amazing.
Supervisor, if I may just say this, I can't respond to a hypothetical.
I know.
You can't respond to anything.
Thank you very much. Have a great day. Next, I'm going to bring up Pearl Jacob. Morning, Ms. Jacob. Name and address of the record again, please.
I'm coming on behalf of the street. Many residents are complaining about student housing in Unionville. Instead, student-occupied housing in Unionville and Hempstead is degrading the quality of life for taxpaying homeowners. Lewd and promiscuous behaviors, trespassing on residents' property, urinating on neighbors' lawns, out-of-control parties, public intoxication, and blocking residents' driveways are common occurrences in Unionville and Hempstead. These student-occupied houses violate a myriad of town of Hempstead building codes and place extra burdens on our overtaxed residents, as well as town of Hempstead and county employees, primarily our sanitation workers within the town of Hempstead. Instead of tackling the root cause of this issue, the town of Hempstead deflects the issues to the police and Hofstra University. Hofstra University has no governance over residential real estate within the town of Hempstead. Owners of these houses that target students as tenants should be taxed at a commercial rate. A task force needs to be implemented within the town of Hempstead Buildings Department to confront this long-standing quality of life issue. This is something that needs to stop being deflected. This needs to stop being put back onto the residents. This needs to stop being deflected to our police in Hofstra, because Hofstra has wiped their hands of this. They have no governance over residential housing and who buys what and who rents what to who. This is a lack of code enforcement within the town of Hempstead. The task force needs to be implemented to deal with this issue. If it was any other area or zip code within the town of Hempstead, this is primarily in Councilmanic District 1, Hempstead, Uniondale. If it was any other area, this would not happen. I'm sure the town would intervene and deal with this issue. This is long-standing. This has been years and years and years. I have neighbors here right now who live within proximity of these homes, and they are at their wit's end. I'm so happy that I don't live next to one of these homes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Jacobs. Actually, I will forward to the county executive your concept of reclassifying the houses, because that's run by the Department of Assessment, which is the county, but I will take the time to forward that to her. Next, I'm going to bring up Ray Denny. Good morning. If you can name and address for the record, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Raz Denny. I live at 1107 Braxton Street in Uniondale. I basically am representing, the people of Uniondale, the community members of the Uniondale area. I would like to bring to your attention multiple yard type signage located and across the street from Uniondale Library, and a large poster located across the street attached to a fence, approximately 6 feet by 4 feet. The sign displays a person with his tongue sticking out. These signs promote a festival supposedly honoring the life of rapper Biz Markie. The signs, when visualized, display a sense of vulgarity and is offensive to the community, especially to women and children. The sign states October 9th as the date. It appears that we are opening a can of worms. This has all the earmarks of a super spreader event. Teenagers will be in close proximity to each other. This event could cause the spread of COVID throughout the school districts. The gathering would adversely affect parking to the library. This is a perfect scenario for drugs and drug exchange. It would probably affect the traffic flow on Uniondale Avenue. I contacted the Nassau County Police Department yesterday, in reference to this, and they contacted Mrs. Goosby's office, who spoke to a representative who stated that it appears that the permission was given for this to be done on October 9th. What I'm really confused about is why wasn't the community involved with this decision?
Who did you speak of the Nassau County Police Department? Was it, do you know the officer's name?
Clark.
Officer Clark? And then was that the local precinct you spoke to them?
The first precinct.
First precinct? Okay, great. Good.
Just in response to your question, the community did speak out, and they did have input into this decision. The primary role, though, of the town of Hempstead is to determine whether or not someone qualifies for a permit to utilize a specific town space, which this festival did. There are people who objected on different grounds to the issuance of the permit, none of which we have jurisdiction over. Most notably, anyone who found some of the images that were posted to be inappropriate in some fashion. we advised that it is not the role of the town of Hempstead to judge the content of anyone's freedom of speech or freedom of expression. There are many people who had a contrary view, who thought it was a very wholesome event, family-oriented, kid-friendly, and they were able to justify their position. Others disagreed, but the town of Hempstead can't sit in judgment of anybody's expressions of their First Amendment rights. So the festival itself has to go forward, and the town has to issue the permit. If we fail to do so, we would be in violation of the United States Constitution, the state constitution, and we'd be acting in an arbitrary and capricious way. Because anybody else who satisfied the requirements for the use of a town field like they did would also be entitled to host their event. The same is also true for the COVID issue that you raised. It was raised, a meeting was held, the senior councilwoman did chair it, I was present and others were present. The concern for COVID, which we all share, was expressed. The organizers of the event agreed to take actions regarding social distancing and mask wearing, but that again is not a basis for the town of Hempstead, regardless of their promises to do that, which were appreciated, I believe, by the community members who were objecting to it. It's not a basis for us to say, no, you can't have your event, no, you can't have your permit, because others have held large social gatherings like those, and they're governed largely by the State Department of Health, Nassau County Department of Health, not by the town of Hempstead. And it's not a basis for us to say, no, sorry, even though you met every requirement that the town of Hempstead has placed for the issuance of a permit, we're not going to give it to you because, well, we just think your event might be dangerous in terms of transmission of COVID. That's not our purview. We cannot do that. It's not lawful for us to refuse.
So in other words, it's okay. I'm a nurse myself, and I've seen a lot of deaths. And I have been right next to people who have, died, holding my hand, and I have to say something about this. I'm looking at kids. I'm looking at kids spreading this in high school. And before you know it, they're spreading it to their, to their families. I'm just saying, if this happened to you, and this was your community, would you allow this? That's all I have to say.
The only thing I'm concerned about is the fact that you're going to do a parade here with Uniondale and Roosevelt. How would you take care of that? What would you do with it? That's what the police department is supposed to do, so how should we handle that?
A parade, you're saying?
That's what was told, a parade, Uniondale and Roosevelt is supposed to be parading up and down the street. I don't know how many people are going to be. You didn't say anything to the Chamber of Commerce. No one has been told about it. They just sent something here saying that they wanted to use one of our parking lots. And that was not discussed with anybody in the community. So how would you control that?
First of all, we're talking about an area that is approximately 200 by 200, just to give you an idea. And what would wind up happening, this type of festival will draw nothing but children.
I would recommend, if you have a greater concern, that you call the jurisdiction that has really control over that, and that's the Nassau County Department of Health. They're the ones who really have to monitor and take care of that. We can't. We looked at every legal bound we had, as the town attorney expressed to you, there's only so much we can do here. But it really, a lot of this falls in the county Department of Health, so I hope you've reached out to them and asked them to go down and monitor the event. And if something takes place, that they have the proper authorities in place to put a stop to it. That's what the Department of Health is really for, and it's really their responsibility to protect people. But thank you very much for being here today.
I will pursue this. Thank you.
Thank you. Bonnie Garon? Good morning. Your name and address for the record again, please. Morning.
Had there been raised this during the administrative calendar, but I just have some comments on items 32 and 33, and that is the easement given to American Water and the
agreement for the Henry Street Park. And I was happy to see that the agreement is on the calendar today and was passed. It was promised at the last session. The only concerns that I have, and I'll just raise them because I know that questions won't be answered for public comment, but the agreement is for 10 years, and I wonder why it couldn't be longer. Before the town makes any improvements at the Henry Street Park, they have to give 30 days notice to All American Water. So that precludes really any improvements for this season, unlike what seemed to be said at the last session. There can't be any construction of bathrooms apparently, because there can't be construction of any sewer line, etc. That's in paragraph 1C and 1D. And apparently there will be, if anything, porta potties, which is, I think, will be pretty gross. You know, none of us like to use them, but these young people who use the field will have to use temporary bathroom facilities, which is specifically referenced in here, that you can, that you will maintain any temporary bathroom facilities. It's pretty disgusting. And the agreement can be terminated for any reason by All American Water. So that doesn't really seem like the strongest agreement we could have to provide a park for the young people who spoke so passionately, coaches at the last session. And given that the company, apparently, New York American Water, excuse me, is the correct name of the company, they needed, apparently, a permanent easement from this town. So apparently there was leverage to get this done in a better way for the Roosevelt.
Yeah, Bonnie, that's not correct. Bonnie, the situation in Inwood was that there were approximately 80 residences that were subject to New York American Water's upgrading of their water piping that would have to travel across town property at the Inwood Marina. And without the easement, those 80 homes would be without water. So basically, I was contacted by the fire department, who obviously was very concerned about making sure there's enough water and enough water pressure to protect the residents, and civic leaders who asked us to please expedite this easement. I contacted Supervisor Clavin's office, and they were able to exercise and expedite the easement immediately so that the residents of Inwood would be able to have their water, that the fire department would be able to protect the community. I would not use that as leverage for anything else. People's ability to get clean and fresh water and the fire department to have water to fight fires is paramount, and I wouldn't ever use that as leverage for any other agreement with American Water.
Well, I certainly agree with you about supplying water for the community and for firefighting, but it's interesting that the two issues passed at the same time. It's interesting that after many years, the company agreed to this license agreement. Coincidentally, at the time they needed the easement, and
no, they didn't need the easement. The 80 residents in the fire department needed the easement so that they could get proper water into the community. And I will tell you that one thing had nothing to do with the other, because it was the community leaders and it was the fire department that alerted us that American Water had not gotten the easement yet. So I contacted Supervisor Clavin's office. He put his staff on it, and he expedited the easement so that people would not be without water. One thing had absolutely nothing to do with the other.
well, then they should have been linked, because it sounds like from what you.
Well, we don't leak fire safety and people's ability to get fresh water with any kind of political leverage. That would be absolutely wrong.
Okay, so this is I'm not saying it's not political, but
And thank you, Mr. Brown.
You did.
And I do, thank you as always. And I do want to let you know that, when it comes to that property, we do have restrictions about, you can't go on other people's property and do the stuff you want to do. We were happy to at least get a 10-year lease out of American Water. And you know what, the porta parties are porta parties. I take my kids to sports 5-6 days a week, and guess what we use? And I use them too, porta potties. It's not a big deal for me. We're trying to do it. They won't let us put bathrooms there. But I do want to let you know, it's curious. Commissioner Zankel is here, and right before the meeting, we were excited about the agreement. And though we're limited on actually what we can do there in terms of chemicals, because of being an aquifer, the commissioner is already looking at natural ways to really enhance the field. So I appreciate your comments, but there are restrictions there, and it's a public safety restrictions. But we're trying to do it the best way, and if we can find organic ways to improve that field, the commissioner and the councilman and I are at the conversation. And as always, we enjoy having you here. Next, I'm going to ask to come up James Jacob. Mr. Jacob, thank you. We appreciate it, Mr. Jacob. Thank you, Mr. Jacob. Thank you.
James Jacob, email resident.
Morning again.
Yeah.
Your name and address, sir?
Fox 8 Ashford.
You get it.
This point of clarification made to the town attorney can help me with some things here. I noticed that when they have certain things or programs for benefit of Nassau County, that it winds up in certain hamlets instead of other areas. Just like a comment was made about a parade versus an event at a close area that a concerned neighbor who has issue with houses and things of that nature, that they try to connect things that are not connected. Because when you have a parade from Roosevelt to Uniondale to show unity in relation to the police department, which is supposed to be something positive, they're trying to spin it kind of negatively. But when you speak about a close area, people may be a sophisticated event. I just don't understand. And then also I noticed that when you read certain articles in Newsday, when certain individuals go to different hamlets that play in sports and things like that, the local content person could get them kicked out. But yet when we try to preserve a quality of life issue, it's like falls on deaf ears. So I'm just curious about that, because I noticed that sometimes there's definitely double standard. That any kind of program to enhance people who are suffering, any kind of program that people need a shoulder weight on and things of that nature, I always think of almost certain areas of a certain zip code on the council in district number 1 on the senior council group 3 district. I don't see it falling in any other districts or other council group people up there sitting here, including the supervisor, because my understanding, when they come with the literature from my vote, and only the council person Boothby shows up instead of the supervisor, I'm wondering, is that something of a personal nature? They just choose not to be active participants to get my vote. Just saying. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jacob. Next, I'm going to Stu Kroll. Morning, Mr. Kroll. Give me your name and address for the record. Thanks.
Stu Kroll, Great Neck. Before I even start, I just want to know, how is it possible in a democracy that we're not allowed to stand up here and ask questions? I don't understand how that's possible. I mean, that means that you guys are not responsible for answering anything. That's terrific.
Because that's something
Right. It's totally absurd. It really is. There's only one tool available to residents of the community where their wishes are summarily
Just to
ignored.
correct the record, I answered Mr. Rowan's question with respect to that. Joe Masella answered questions with respect to other issues, and members of the board at times will answer questions that the public has. But really, this is your time to comment on what we're doing.
Or to ask a question.
Or to ask questions, but we can
We answer
questions.
nobody answers.
We don't know what you're going to ask. How do we know what you're going to ask?
Budget questions you'll answer? To the best of your ability, that's all.
When we feel it's necessary, we do.
That's great. The next time it's needed, I'll tell them that when I feel like answering, I will. So anyway, there's only one tool available to residents of the community where their wishes are summarily ignored. We must realize with that election day 1 month away, our only option is to vote for a totally new administration. In the town of Hempstead, a vastly disproportionate share of homeless shelters and other social facilities are located in a small number of less affluent towns. I don't recall any social services facilities being located in Gordon City. I urge all animal-loving residents of the town of Hempstead to consider whether the shelter administration has done the right thing for the animals and the citizens that care so much for them. Cats have multiplied at a geometric rate throughout the town due to the TNR program being closed for so long, and even now operating at a minuscule proportion of its true capacity. This is a virtually contactless program which has been totally closed for safety reasons, while Mr. Clavin had a fundraiser for 200 people when the family was 50. Apparently, the party treasury must be filled. Even recently, you can only visit cats by appointment. This is something that many people do on the spur of the moment. Having to make an appointment will discourage many people from visiting the shelter. This will keep many cats from finding their forever homes. We all know that the shelter has very few cats. On a regular basis, many cats are now being sent to a sanctuary in Maryland called Good Shepherd Sanctuary, which is a feral cat sanctuary. Many of these cats are listed on your adoptable page, which seems to be somewhat of a conflict. Perhaps the serious problems of the shelter are no surprise given the fact that the shelter director, Pastore, and the behaviorist quote-unquote trainer is Fonte. Ms. Fonte was supposed to have 5 qualifications when she was hired. This is required by law. She apparently had 1 legitimate qualification, claimed that she had the other 4. This is also known as lying. She released the dog to the general public that had known aggressive behavior. The result was not surprising. Some unfortunate individual was maimed. This is currently the subject of a lawsuit against the town. The shelter director, Pastore, sent the dogs to Utica. He visited the facility and gave it a clean bill of health. The mayor of Utica had a somewhat different view. He deemed the condition so heinous that he broke into tears, which you can see on YouTube. When a rescue in Utah stepped forward and took our dogs to safety, we didn't send them $1 solitary for their saving the lives of at least 10 of our dogs. Pastore is also the subject, I believe, of at least 1 lawsuit and probably more. It appears as though the moral compass of some of our facility directors and those overseeing these facilities are in serious question. It was a nice day for a visit.
And Mr. Kroll, I am going to answer one of your questions. You asked about the locations of the homeless shelters.
Yes, I did.
I suggest you ask the county executive if that's the exclusive jurisdiction of the Nassau County Department of Social Services.
Okay, I will ask.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll, for visiting Town of Hempstead. Always appreciate it. Next, we bring up Diane Madden.
Clarence.
Morning, Ms. Madden. Name and address for the record, please.
Diane Madden, I don't know what you find so humorous, Supervisor. You probably haven't heard the news that about 4 Democrats are requesting absentee ballots compared to 1 Republican. As far as your comment, town attorney, about how conscious the town is about abiding by the law, you may want to check to see if all of the cats that you're shipping out using donation money all have health certificates and CBIs. I have not found them. I visited Tow House the other day. I haven't been there since COVID, and apparently Mr. Pastore needs a babysitter. Maybe instead of that, Supervisor, you can fulfill your promises and bring in outside independent animal care experts. Volunteers were told to stay away. It's a day normally you would highlight the animals in the animal shelter. On each kennel it says 13 and up for children. Those animals should be behaving like Lassie and Rin Tin Tin by now in this amount of time. And with your alleged experts, there were 7 boards in the shelter. All 7 are empty. None of them highlight animals. I cannot believe it was like being in a morgue. I'm sure prisons are more welcoming than that animal shelter, Supervisor, something that you promised to fix. No dogs, by the way, in the agility pens, no dogs in the pens outside. And hardly any people compared to years before where the lines would round the Wanta Avenue for people waiting to adopt and get their pets vaccinated. I'd like to talk about Erin, the person who, thank God, spoke out to News 12 and to Channel 4 yesterday about the home on Washington Boulevard that you've all ignored. Last I spoke to Erin, she received a note on her door from under Mr. Pastore not to bring up cats there for any help whatsoever. This is something, Supervisor, again, you failed to follow through with. I had a email to the DA and I said, what do you mean no animal cruelty? Every person that ignores these animals and their suffering should be held on animal cruelty charges. I hope to see that day. Cats are now drinking out of pool water. I really meant to bring each of you a glass of pool water to see what that must be like, because you closed out the TNR program just as these animals kept producing and producing and producing. And you tried to clean it up, Supervisor, and all of your people ran when the news showed up. You failed to be there for a press conference yesterday. You might not want to miss our press conference tomorrow. I'm not getting any of my boils. If you can keep that in mind, Ms. Town Clerk, they are overdue. And Most of all, this is an outreach to Democrats in the town. You're doing a great job requesting those absentee ballots. We need to work together, remove this board.
Thank you, Ms. Madden, as always.
And have victory.
And just so everybody knows, after numerous attempts reaching out to Nassau County no avail, the staff reached out to the Nassau County District Attorney's Office regarding that property in North Belmore, and that's how it's situated.
2 years.
Thank you. And next we're going to have Patty Harris, please come on up.
2 years. Nice try, come on.
Good morning, Ms. Harris. If you give your name and address for the record, thank you.
My question is, one of my questions is to Town Clerk Kate Murray. The permits that the organization that is using for the function, the festival for October 9th, is the same form is on this town website? Is that the same form they have to fill out?
Joe, yourself?
The different forms for different purposes, but use of the form that you're referring to, yes, is in fact the same for anybody who needs to utilize a town facility.
Special event, the special event form. Yes, okay. Could you tell me, please, what was the information that you received from that organization, the responsibility of the ensuring of property safety protocol? What was the answer they gave you?
Ma'am, we're not here and we cannot at this time pull up each and every use permit and review each and every one of them in public at a town board meeting. The use permits were reviewed carefully by the town clerk's office, otherwise they would never get issued. They also get reviewed by the Department of General Services and the town attorney's office. So I assure you that all the safeguards were in place. And if the permit was issued, it had gone through multiple layers of review. But we can't review them now again at a town board meeting.
Sir, I'm talking particularly about a meeting that you said you was at, and you were stating information from that meeting a few minutes ago to this audience here. So, if you don't remember the safety protocol that they gave you, then I think you need to state, you should have some type of information given to you so that you can read it word for word what exactly said into that meeting. Because you just told us, you remember in the meeting, you had a discussion. So the safety of people of Uniondale, or safety for the people that who's coming to this location, that they're stating, which they state is the Uniondale Library parking lot, which the Library of Uniondale state they have nothing to do with it. So that's false advertising right there. Second, what is the, sorry, no, I have my glasses with me, sorry about that. What is the placement that they are going to be doing for a protection for COVID-19? Now, this is on your special event paperwork. So it should be that easy for you to remember. The meeting was only a couple days ago.
Ma'am, the most I can suggest to you is that you put in a FOIL request for the special use permit and the application. That's all I can tell you. With respect to the meeting, I think you're conflating two separate things. The permit and its application, which again was vetted by the town clerk's office, the Department of General Services, the town attorney's office, and the meeting were two separate events. The meeting was held at the request of members of the community who had issues relating to the content of the festival, which, as I explained, is not a proper thing for the town to be considering. We don't get into who finds some speech objectionable and who finds it enjoyable or something that they support. In terms of what was discussed for safety, issues were raised at that time and they gave assurances, and I told you what they were, about social distancing and mask wearing and signage. That is not part of the application process. That is what happened at the meeting, which is separate and apart from the application process that I was referring to. They're two separate things.
It says special event. It is the responsibility of the organization to ensure all proper safety protocols are followed. Then at the bottom, and it's highlighted in yellow, and then it says at number 8, the details plan on the safety procedures that you are putting in place to protect against COVID-19. That is on the town website on the special event. I just asked you, is this one of the paperwork that they use for a permit? And you just said yes before.
Again, my recommendation to you is that you foil the specifics that you're asking for. We don't have the presence at every town board meeting for every single special use permit. We receive so many in a given year. It would be impossible for any one person or any one office to be able to answer that question. But the information is public and you may request it, you may foil it.
4 months, 5 months. Also, Senior Councilwoman Goofy, I know that you stated that what was the difference of the police department and this event. The difference is Nassau Road and Greenwich is a 4-lane road. Uniondale Avenue is a 2-lane road. The police department state they had no idea of any safety precaution that is going to be given to them. Unless you contacted them while this meeting is going on, then that's the update.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. I know the Nassau County,
Can I just say one more
we have to really go to the 3-minute, but I will tell you, you want to stick around and give us your further, we can have somebody go in the back and reach out to the police department to do a follow-up. We'll be delighted
The
to.
meeting was already a done deal before the organizations.
Thank you, Ms. Harris. Next, I'm going to call Denise Mayer.
That is a no deal for Uniondale School District and Uniondale
Thank you very much, Ms. Harris.
family, I should say.
Good morning. If you need an address for the record, please. Thank you.
Good morning, Denise Mayer. Prior to the last meeting, I did call around to a bunch of places, including the highway department. The day before the meeting, I did call Senior Councilwoman Gooseby's office. I came to the meeting with the issue. I'm here for the same issue of the homeless gentleman at exit 20 South on the eastbound side with all of his garbage. And the day after the meeting, I did get a call from Senior Councilwoman Gooseby's office confirming the area. As of last week, the gentleman has moved about 200 feet in a different direction with all of his belongings, all of his garbage. In the original direction where he was, there's 2 large black bags of garbage as though they're waiting to be picked up. And more garbage is accumulating. He has more garbage. The area he's in, some of his garbage is in the walkway. There's an overpass, to cross if you choose to walk for any reason. And this morning I walked by there and some of his garbage is hanging in the walkway. I did speak, I believe it was the Councilman Diaz-Bazito at the end in the back. He got my name and number. I did also mention to him the memorial that was accumulating garbage by the Fairview Shopping Center. I see that is gone, and maybe that's in his district. However, the homeless gentleman and all the garbage is, like I said, only moved 200 feet. So it's the same issue. He's just moved and...
So ma'am, I know that we spoke after the meeting 2 weeks ago. The memorial was cleaned up, and the area that the gentleman was originally in the South Hempstead portion was also cleaned up. I'm told that he's now moved to the top of the Southern State Parkway. Is that?
The area is not cleaned up. I just said there are 2 large garbage bags there as of this morning.
The original area where he was cleaned up, because I know someone from my office went out there.
What would be the original area? That same where he's near the exit? That's not cleaned up.
Yeah.
I gave you pictures 2 weeks ago, and I have more photos with me there on my phone. I can show them to you, and I can email them to anyone that needs to see them.
Well, we're aware of it, and he refuses to move. What he does is move from one spot to the other. We can't make him move. Now he's on the state property, so he does not want to move. The whole time, so we can't make him move.
Yeah, but something has to be done about the garbage. Would you like to be driving by to see this in your community every day?
Ma'am, I need to also point out that the area that you're referring to where this gentleman is owned by the state of New York and the State Department of Transportation, which does have local facilities where they monitor it. I mean, they're responsible for, just by way of example, they're responsible for cutting the grass along the parkway. they would be responsible for the upkeep of that section where the gentleman has chosen to place his stuff, as well as the cleanup. We do what we can, but it's really state property.
But then why do we vote for local officials? Are you going to give me a number to call the state now instead?
I'd be happy to give, sure, I'd be happy to give you the state officials.
You shouldn't have to. If you are a local official, if I'm voting for a council person, I'm voting for a town clerk, a town supervisor, why do I have to call? What is your purpose?
And we've reached out to the state representatives, and I have to say that the only progress that has been made is what's done by the town of Hempstead. The original garbage was cleaned up. That was near the South Hempstead sign. I know that because someone from my office went out there.
I walked by there this morning. I have photos on my phone.
Ma'am, I know for a fact, maybe there's new garbage, but there certainly was garbage picked up.
I think the original garbage got placed in a black garbage bag, and it's still there.
From what I was told is that the original garbage was picked up. Regardless, now the individual has moved from the South Hempstead sign. Then he moved closer to the street, and now he's near by the Southern State Parkway.
All I know is I live in the town of Hempstead. I pay taxes. I pay town of Hempstead taxes. I pay New York State taxes. I pay a bunch of taxes, and you should be having.
And I know also for a fact that my office has reached out to Senator Kaminsky's office to give him the information as well, because like the town attorney has mentioned, it is state property.
Unbelievable. You're just going to keep passing the buck. That's what you're doing.
It's not about passing the buck. It's about if there's an issue in a state park or a town park, believe me, the state officials don't send their people in to clean up our parks either.
I'm sure I can't sit out in my front yard and just keep garbage there and live in my front yard. I'm sure I'll be ticketed and fined. I don't see the purpose of local politicians.
Thanks. And next up, Darryl Godfrey. Okay. Next, I'm going to call up Wiggins. Good morning. If you can name and address for the record, please.
My name is Lord L. Wiggins, resident of Union. And I would just like to speak on a few points. First of all, I want to congratulate the town for a wonderful event that was held Saturday to honor Senior Councilwoman Dorothy Guzman. Noted politicians from Washington, D.C. traveled. Sororities came. Politicians, lawyers, everyone, and of course, the community came. So thank you very, very much. Now, in regards to the event that's going to be across the street in the parking lot from the library, I attended that event 2 years ago, in which you had young children who were poets reciting, not rapping, but reciting. You had rappers, of course, you had dancers, you had musicians. You had a bunch of young people expressing themselves in the manner in which they chose, in which they felt they could communicate. Generation gaps should not be. I call them dinosaurs, and I'm one. Okay? I am a dinosaur. And I say this. We have to learn that we learn from not only our elders, but we learn from the youth too. Because keep in mind, if it wasn't for the youth, okay, you wouldn't have South Africa free of apartheid today. If it wasn't for the youth, those who went on the civil rights marches, but they expressed themselves in their own way. So we need to know that it matters no how long you live, you always learn something every day. The rapper, what's his name, Bismarcky, Patchogue. They've given him a street name after him. Okay, the street is named after him for his contributions to his community. And keep in mind, a beatboxer uses his tongue because he basically imitates the beat of a drum machine or a drummer. Now, last night, the superintendent of Uniondale School District stated there is a group that's going to Yes We Can Community Center. Yes We Can Community Center.
I'm sorry, but Ms. Wiggins, your time is up. Even though we like what you're saying, you sound very good, but your time is up, and I thank you so much for coming and explaining it.
Ms. Wiggins, if you'd like to stick around, Kathy Malone from my office, we'll talk to you in the back. And I do want to say thank you for being there Saturday, and for anybody that didn't attend, you missed a wonderful, wonderful celebration of the senior councilwoman, from Senator Schumer, from our fine Attorney General, to our state controller, to a lot of people who used to work here that came out, and what a nice reminiscence. And Councilwoman, you spoke eloquently, and we want to, you know, as Ms. Wiggins said, it was a wonderful ceremony, and thank you very much for being here for all of us, being here for the residents, and being exactly who you are. Thank you very much, Councilwoman.
Thank you very much.
I do not have any other slips. Is there any member of the audience who should be heard that hasn't? If not, then have a wonderful afternoon, everybody.